Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're getting a really interesting look inside OpenAI. We've got these excerpts from a recent chat with Sam Altman.
Yeah, it's a great source, gives you that direct perspective, beyond just the headlines. Lets us hear about the journey, the thinking.
Exactly. So our mission here is to unpack all of that, pull out the key insights, understand their history, how they think about strategy, what they're focused on now, and their view of the future.
Right, straight from Altman. And there's some fascinating stuff in there.
Oh, yeah. Like how ChatGPT actually came about, kind of surprising, actually, and how they're trying to stay fast even as they grow. Plus this generational thing with AI use he mentions.
It's quite a story, from the small research lab to, well, what it is today.
So let's start at the beginning. Let's rewind to, 2016, OpenAI then. It wasn't like it is now at all.
Not even close. The source says it was tiny, maybe 14 people, and strictly a research lab.
A research lab. So the idea of like a product or a company.
Completely unimaginable back then, apparently. They had this strong belief, this direction, but no real action plan. And LLMs, he says, they felt very far off.
Wow. So what were they doing if not building products? Just writing papers?
Well, not just papers. They were trying things,
Yeah.
Seeing if systems actually worked, like getting AI to play video games or control robot hands. More hands-on than pure theory.
Right. Trying to make it real somehow.
Yeah. And that experimentation, that's where the excitement around unsupervised learning and language models started to build. GPT-1, GPT-2 came out of that.
Okay. And then GPT-3 seems like the big turning point. They realized they had something.
Okay.
He calls it kind of cool.
Kind of cool, yeah. But they still couldn't figure out what to do with it. And crucially, the cost was exploding.
Ah, the money.
Exactly. He mentions they were heading into the world of billion-dollar models. You can't just fund that from grants forever.
So the need for a business wasn't initially because they had this killer product idea.
No, it sounds like it was more about sustaining the research. They needed a business model to keep funding the core AI work, which was becoming incredibly expensive.
Okay, that makes sense. And they looked at what? YC companies?
APIs.
Yeah, they observed that APIs often worked well for startups, and that making tech easy to use is, well, generally a good thing. Basic principles, but important.
Which led to the GPT-3 API launch, June 2020. And the reaction was
pretty muted, according to the source. The world didn't exactly beat down their door.
Oh.
But, and this is key, founders in Silicon Valley did see something. It felt like it was pointing at something important, even if nobody knew what.
But actually building businesses on it was tough, just copywriting stuff at first.
Yeah, that's what he says. Copywriting as a service was kind of the only significant early business. Not exactly world-changing yet.
But then came the insight from the playground.
Yes. This is the fascinating bit. Even though developers struggled to build diverse businesses on the API, ordinary people, they just loved talking to the model in the basic playground interface. Even though it was, and I quote, terrible at chat back then.
Terrible at chat. This was before RLHF really kicked in.
Right. RLHF, reinforcement learning from human feedback. Can you quickly explain that again?
Sure. It's basically a training method where humans rate the model's answers. Good answer, bad answer. That feedback helps the model learn to follow instructions better, be more helpful, sound more natural in conversation.
Got it. So people liking the flawed chat plus the potential of RLHF. That was the spark.
That seems to be it. The conviction grew. People just want to talk to this thing. Forget complex applications for a moment. The core desire was conversational.
And that's what led directly to building ChatGPT, not some grand product plan from years earlier.
Exactly. Driven by user behavior, intuition, and then the RLHF tech making it viable. Launched November 30, 2022. And now, 500 million weekly users? It's wild.
Incredible. A real lesson in watching what users do, not just what you think they should do. Okay, so let's pivot a bit. From origin story to growth. How do they handle scaling up so fast? The source mentions this common problem. Big companies get bigger, but slower. Like molasses.
Right. The classic organizational drag. More people, more meetings, more arguments over tiny details, less actual stuff getting done.
So OpenAI tries to counter this. How?
Their approach sounds pretty intense. A belief that everyone should be really busy, teams kept small, and the company doing a lot of different things relative to its size.
Avoids big meetings and turf wars, maybe?
That seems to be the idea.
Yeah.
Give small teams huge responsibility, let them run. He says if you grow headcount but don't increase the amount of work getting done, you just end up with people fighting in rooms.
Keep the researchers, engineers, product folks busy and high impact.
Yeah, that's crucial. Growing means doing more, not just managing more people.
And doing a lot ties into their overall ambition.
Totally. They want to build a major internet platform, right? A personalized AI across everything. That's huge. You can't do that without building a ton of functionality, which means you need that high velocity.
High ambition, high velocity, small, empowered teams. Got it. What about the big picture strategy? He seems to push back against the idea of a detailed master plan.
Very much so. No complex, multi-year, working backwards plan. He explicitly says they believe in working forwards, taking it, one or two steps at a time.
But they do have focus, right? It's not random.
Oh, definitely. There's a clear direction. Build the AI infrastructure, massive scale, the AI factory idea, keep making models better, and ship a great consumer product at the top of the stack. Those are the big pillars.
But the specific path, the tactics, that's flexible.
Extremely flexible. He emphasizes being nimble, adjusting as the world changes. He even suggests products for next year probably aren't even fully planned out today.
That's quite a statement.
It is. But underneath that flexibility, there's this deep confidence. Confidence in building products people love. Confidence in making great models. Optimism about the research continuing to deliver breakthroughs.
And he thinks those rigid, working backwards plans often fail anyway.
Yeah, he points to historical examples where that approach just didn't work out in fast-moving fields.
That nimbleness seems key when you look at how slowly some bigger traditional companies are adapting to AI. Why is that, do you think?
Well, the source is pretty direct about it. It's the same old story, isn't it? People and organizations get incredibly stuck in their ways.
So it's less about the tech difficulty, more about inertia. Culture.
Yeah, exactly. He draws this contrast. AI is changing every quarter, but a big company might have, say, a security council meeting once a year. The clock speeds are totally mismatched.
And that mismatch opens the door for startups.
Creates that creative destruction dynamic. Startups built on the new paradigm just move so much faster.
His prediction for those big companies isn't too rosy then. Denial, then scrambling too late.
That seems to be the pattern he expects. A few years of fighting it or figuring it out, while the startups just blow past them. He sounds disappointed, but maybe not surprised.
And the slowness, it's not just companies. He talks about a generational divide in how people use AI.
Yeah, he calls the difference crazy. Compares it to early smartphones. Kids just got it faster. He thinks companies are showing symptoms of that same lag.
So what are the cool things younger people are doing? You mentioned a couple of use cases.
Right. One is using it like an operating system, connecting it to files, using really complex prompts, maybe memorized or saved somewhere, and integrating it deeply.
Not just a chatbot in a window, but the core interface.
Pretty much. The other big one is using it as a life advisor. He says people, especially in their 20s, are consulting ChatGPT before making decisions, really leaning on its context and memory about them.
Wow, that's a significant reliance.
It's a real shift. That memory feature seems key there, so the source kind of simplifies it. Older folks, maybe a Google replacement. People in their 20s, 30s, a life advisor. College kids, an operating system.
That's a neat, if broad, summary. And internally at OpenAI, they use it too.
Oh, yeah. He says ChatGPT writes a lot of our code, and specifically meaningful code, not just boilerplate stuff.
That's using your own product for sure. Okay, looking ahead now, the technical vision. What's the dream for the API, the platform?
The long-term hope seems to be this kind of seamless integration. Like you could sign in with OpenAI everywhere, and eventually maybe an SDK.
SDK, a software development kit, so others can build OpenAI features into their apps.
Exactly. The vision is your personalized AI with all your context being available wherever you are digitally, even taking over parts of the UI and other apps. He admits the current API isn't there yet, not by a long shot, but that's the goal.
Sounds like building a whole new layer for the internet.
Yeah, he even talks about hoping for a new protocol on the level of HTTP, something that lets AI components and agents work together with built-in identity, payments, data transfer.
Like web pages linking, but for AI services.
Kind of like that, yeah. A way for them to securely share info and tools. It's an emerging vision, he says. It'll take iteration.
What about different kinds of data? Like sensor data, real-world inputs.
People are already doing that, apparently, feeding sensor data into API calls. And the latest models handle it pretty well. He thinks it'll get baked in more explicitly later, but says there's a lot happening there already.
And voice. Seems critical for natural interaction.
Definitely. He calls it extremely important. Admits their current voice product isn't quite good enough yet, but they're confident they'll crack that code.
And if they do,
Much more voice interaction, obviously. He's interested in voice plus GUI using both together, and he thinks truly human-level voice could enable a totally new class of devices.
Interesting. And coding, is that just another application or something more fundamental?
He sees it as more central to the future of OpenAI, not just a vertical. It's how models will actuate the world writing programs, calling APIs. ChatGPT needs to be excellent at writing code.
So moving from assistant to agent to application generator almost.
Something like that. It reflects that shift.
Okay, stepping back again. The core ingredients for making models smarter, what does he point to?
It's the familiar trio: data, compute, and algorithms. Like the transformer architecture, that was a huge algorithmic leap.
So scaling data and compute is vital, but breakthroughs in algorithms are still the biggest lever.
That's what he suggests. He thinks algorithmic breakthroughs are the highest leverage thing, and maybe there are still a few 10x or 100x improvements lurking out there. But yeah, the recipe is algorithms, data, compute.
Makes sense. Let's talk research philosophy. How do they
Yeah.
balance letting researchers chase cool ideas versus, top-down company goals?
It's a tough balance. He thinks most companies do too much top-down control. You need some for big coordinated efforts, but you also need that freedom for researchers to explore.
And OpenAI's approach.
He says they basically copied principles from successful research labs of the past. Apparently, lots of people ask for advice but don't follow those principles, whereas OpenAI did, and it's worked well for them.
Interesting. Do they work with academics outside OpenAI?
Yep. They have programs and partnerships. Often academics just want access to the model's API or base models. So he argues that by focusing maybe 90% of their effort on making the general model better, cheaper, more accessible, they're actually serving that community pretty well.
Right. A better general model helps almost everyone. Now, customization. We hear about fine-tuning agents. What's the ultimate, platonic ideal for personalization?
He describes this future vision. Imagine a really tiny, efficient reasoning engine, but it sits on top of a massive context window, 1 trillion tokens of context.
1 trillion. Containing what?
Everything about you, your whole life's data, or maybe a company's entire knowledge base. This tiny model wouldn't need retraining. It would just reason incredibly efficiently over that huge personal context.
Wow. So current methods are just steps along the way.
Yeah, he sees things like fine-tuning as compromises needed now because we don't have that ideal state yet. The future, he hopes, is this deep, context-rich reasoning.
That makes intuitive sense. You need all the context for true personalization. Okay, he also gave some predictions, sort of off the cuff, about value creation timelines.
Yeah, a rough sketch. By 2025, agents doing actual work, coding being a dominant category.
Okay.
By 2026, AI enabling very large scientific discoveries or really helping humans make them. He links this to real economic growth.
Scientific breakthroughs, got it.
And by 2027, AI moving into the physical world. Robots becoming serious economic contributors.
Agents, science, robots. 25, 26, 27. Pretty specific guesses for huge shifts.
Yeah, speculative, but gives you a sense of the trajectory he imagines.
Finally, the chat touched on some more personal stuff. Resilience for founders.
Right. There was that interesting benchmark about GPT-3 first, basically saying if you feel way smarter than GPT-3, maybe think again, suggesting it's already pretty capable.
A reality check, perhaps.
Right.
And resilience itself. What was his take?
He believes it gets easier over time. Not that the problems get easier, they actually get harder, higher stakes, but the emotional toll lessens. You build up that resilience muscle with experience. But the really sharp point was about the hardest part. It's not the crisis moment itself. Adrenaline support carries you through that.
Right.
The hardest part is the fallout after. The days, weeks later, when you have to pick up the pieces and rebuild. That quiet, grinding part. He says that's the psychological aspect founders need to practice getting better at.
That idea of the fallout after the rebuilding, that's universal, isn't it? Way beyond just tech founders.
Absolutely. A very human insight about overcoming big challenges.
So quite a journey we've traced. From that tiny 2016 research lab chasing robot hands to this global phenomena built on, people just wanted to chat. We've heard about a strategy focused on speed and small teams, a vision for AI woven into the internet's fabric, and these really striking comments on industry inertia and how different generations are already living with AI.
Yeah, listening to Altman directly gives you such a textured understanding. The history, the strategy, the sheer ambition. It's all there.
So as you're listening, maybe think about this. Those stages Altman laid out, agents working for us by 2025, big science in 2026, robots in 2027. How might that actually ripple through your world, your industry, and maybe also that idea of the fallout after, how do you handle the rebuilding phase after a tough time? Something to reflect on.
Thanks for joining this deep dive.